All right, everybody, I'm so excited. So, thank you for joining us. We got a great guest today, one of my great friends in life. So, I appreciate him so much. As I'm teeing this up, if you guys have a chance to drop an iTunes review, or it's called Apple Podcasts now, or drop a rating and review on Stitcher, it'd help out quite a bit. I look forward to reading some reviews down the road on future podcasts. So, we might feature your review on a future podcast. So, whew, all right. Today I've got a guest that I've been waiting to have on for quite some time. Former Major League Baseball player, current scout, family man, just all around good guy. Everybody I know that knows him says, man, that guy smiles all the time. He brings so much energy all the time. He's just such a fun person to be around. And I just appreciate you. So, welcome to the show, Kerry Robinson, or K Rob, as everybody knows you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dan. I appreciate everything you just said, and I feel the exact same way about you. We've been friends for a few years now, right? So we've done a lot of fun stuff together. So let's keep it going.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, things that seems like people always want to know when there's a major league baseball player around is how'd that happen? Like, how'd you go from little kid to major league baseball player? What do you think some uh, keys to that were? Some pivot moments in your life, or whatever your thoughts may be of literally, because what is it? A one in 150,000 little leaguers, or one in 100,000 college, baseball player. There's some crazy statistic about the extremely improbable likelihood of a kid going from.
Yeah, the odds are astronomical, and I'm really glad nobody told it to me when I was a kid, because that's just something for. It's more doubt for you to put in your mind, along the journey. So, just me. I grew up in North County and Spanish Lake and St. Louis area, and I had a dream. Like I was literally Rodriguez from the movie Sandlot. If anybody's seen that movie, one of my favorite sports movies of all time. But I was a kid. Well, me and a multiple other kids, but we every Saturday we'd get up and play some kind of sport. If it wasn't baseball on our makeshift quote unquote Sandlot, we were playing basketball, hockey, street hockey, football, soccer, everything. And so, I grew up loving to play sports. And my mother, I'm an only child. My mother, when I was a kid, would take me on pretty much every summer. She was a teacher. My dad was a pharmaceutical salesman, and she would take me on two vacations pretty much every summer, usually a cruise or to Las Vegas. And so I got used to traveling. And I remember telling her when I was like 10 or 11 years old, I want to do a job where I can fly on airplanes and stay in really nice hotels. I don't know what that is, but later on, that's what I did as a professional baseball player. So I got to do, and I'm still doing that, as a pro scout, still traveling on airplanes and staying in hotels. And so, that's how it started. And then, you got to think of things you want to do. And then just like, you throw things out there in the universe and you start to make good decisions and things start to happen. It's kind of funny. My story would probably be an interesting movie to me. I don't know if anybody else, but to me, it'd be interesting.
Your story would be interesting. What do you think were some of those good decisions that you made along the way?
Yeah. So, one of them's pretty basic, and that's like, I don't drink alcohol. I never have. I remember going to like high school. I didn't go to a lot of high school parties because, again, I was so focused on where I wanted to go. But I always thought, I wanted to be like Ozzie Smith and Willie McGee and those guys. And for some reason, I always had this vision that I was going to play for the St. Louis Cardinals one day. So I never wanted to make whenever I made decisions, I tried to make it is this decision going to help me get closer to that goal of playing for the Cardinals, or is it going to move me farther away? And so one of the things was drinking. Like I was never into drinking alcohol. We'd go to parties. Me and my friends would go to parties, but I was never into the drinking thing. And so I always thought, like, why do people do that? And then the next day they're sick or have their hangovers or whatever. And it just seemed like a bad idea that wasn't going to get me closer to my goal. And then later on, I found out that one of my favorite athlete of all time, Deion Sanders, didn't drink either. I mean, that pretty much cemented. It's like, yeah, I made a good idea when I was a younger kid, and I'm gonna stick through it. So,
No
since
way. I didn't know that about Dion.
yeah, Neon's not a drinker either. So, I wanted to be like him, and you pretty much do what your idols do. So, yeah, that's one of the decisions I made. Just don't be a drinker, and I wasn't the type of person. I don't think the actually when I was in high school, I was a little bit. I mean, the girl. I never had girlfriends or anything like that in high school, nor I looked like a little kid. Probably didn't know how to talk to him and was mean to him anyway. So, I kind of just stayed focused on my sports throughout the high school years.
Yeah, a lot of guys that are into sports kind of stay in their lane and just lead a pretty good life and stay away from a bunch of stuff. I've read statistics and stuff about it, and it's amazing how that how that plays out. Interesting side note. Did you ever get to meet Dion?
I did. I did actually. Yeah. I have a picture with him too. The first time I met him was in Columbus, Ohio. Um, I was in AAA at the Yankees, and he
The
just came
first
back.
time I met him.
The first,
Okay.
yeah. First, I was in AAA in 2000 in Columbus, and he had just came back to play with the Reds, I believe, and he was in AAA with I believe Louisville at the time. And they said Dion was there. I'm like, oh man, I got to go meet Dion. So went over to the clubhouse, to the other clubhouse, and he talked to me for a little bit, and he was the nicest guy ever. And then the second time I met him was in Bush Stadium, 2001 or two, one of those like a year later, and he took a picture with me. And so that's one of my favorite sports pictures I have. One with him, and then one with Wayne Gretzky because I'm a hockey guy too. So those are my two favorite pictures, and he was gracious to me. So like yeah, I wanted to be the guy that was a superstar in football and baseball, and I was just able to do the one between the two sports, just baseball for me.
Man, that is awesome that you're able to not only meet Dion, but since he was so influential in your life from afar, getting to meet him, then also meet him on the baseball field. Like that's awesome.
That's right. It's cool to have an idol, and then I played against him.
Especially him being a football player. And then he
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Well, and funny thing is, yeah, I told you my story would be an interesting movie. Is so that was 2000. The year before that, in '99, I went to spring training as a Seattle Mariners. So my story's crazy. I could go all over the place with it, but
yeah. Step us into your baseball, little story there.
well, in '99, I went to spring training with the Seattle Mariners. I was picked up on waivers and and from the Arizona Fall League with the Mariners. Went to spring training with them, so I was in spring training with A Rod, and Ichiro actually played with us that year in spring.
Ichiro.
He didn't play with the team, but he came over from Japan and played with us during spring training, and Ken Griffey Jr. So the next year, I end the season in Cincinnati in the big leagues in Cincinnati as a September call up. All right, so we get to that off season, and the Reds took me off the roster, but they still had my rights. So I came to spring training the next spring with the Reds, and that's a spring where, um, our GM, gosh, I can't even think of his name right now. He goes to spring training. He says, "I'm going to get Griffey, not to meet Goofy from Anaheim." So that's the off season where Griffey came from Seattle to Cincinnati, and mind you, I'm a center field left fielder. And at that same spring, they brought in a guy by the name of Kamara Barti. And that same spring, Deion Sanders came too. So I didn't get to play with Deion because I was on the minor league side, but Deion was actually in the other clubhouse on the other side of the wall. So I did not get to meet him at that time. But yeah, so long story short, I've been close to Deion a few times. I was close to being his teammate, and just missed him and met him the next year.
Wow. It's so funny when you think of athletes and different things. I was talking to one particular guy, he's a Hall of Famer in football. And I said, man, who would you want to meet in all the world and blah, blah. And he's like, I'd really like to meet Jordan. I was like, what? Like, this guy's your guy. And like, you're a Hall of Famer. What do you mean you don't know Jordan? You haven't been at some charity event or something. He goes, nah, I've never even had a shot. Like, I've never even been close. I've never had an event where and then for you to be on the same baseball field with him, that's cool. That's
By
cool.
the way. since you said what you just said, that's the best question to ask anybody that has fame. Ask them who they would like to meet, because one, it's a different interaction that people, that an entertainer, anybody would have with a fan or anybody. Like Dane, you're really good at just talking to famous quote unquote people as a normal person, right? But you're out of the ordinary, right? You're extraordinary when you do that. So that's a great question to ask somebody who might be famous, where it's an icebreaker, but also that that question could go so many different ways, and it could be a such an entertaining question for you, but also that person to talk about. um One of my favorite, I guess, celebrities I wanted to meet of all time, which is another funny story, but was Tiffany Amber Thiessen, right? I always wanted to
Oh
meet,
my goodness.
you know, Halle Berry, somebody, some pretty lady like that, right? And you want to hear that story, by the way?
Oh, absolutely. I know exactly who you're talking about. And I remember, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
from Saved by the Bell. She's
Yeah, she wasn't the worst person to look at on a TV screen as a kid, that was for sure.
absolutely. So in 2001, my first road trip with the Cardinals, Steve Klein, it was a Saturday night. He's like, "Hey, Robbie, you want to go out tonight?" I was like, "Heck yeah!" I'm in LA for the first time as a major leaguer. I want to go out. I'm like, "Yeah, I want to see some movie stars or something like that." And he's like, "Who do you want to see?" And I told him, I was like, either Halle Berry or Charlize Theron or Tiffany Amber Thiessen, somebody like that. And he goes, "Okay, you're going to see that girl from Saved by the Bell tonight." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, well, whatever." So it was me, him, Jim Edmonds. Um, I can't think of the guy's name. Rich Eisen, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I was hanging with Rich once.
yeah, yeah, and then a guy, the guy from Weekend at Bernie's, and I can never think of his name, but the dark haired guy from Weekend at Bernie's, right? So the five of us are in the VIP of the Blue Martini bar. I think that's the name, something like that. We're not there for 30 minutes, and Edmonds goes, "Hey, we're going to go to another place down the road." So we go into that place. It was the Saddle Ranch, was where they have one of those mechanical bulls or whatever. And I had never seen anything like that before. So we go in there. We're not even there 10 minutes. We're sitting in another area. And Steve Klein, who's a jokester, right? He's like the
Yeah,
funny.
total jokester. So for those that don't know, as soon as you said Steve Klein, I said, "Oh, this is going to be a good story."
Right, right. He goes, "Hey, Robbie, there's a girl from Saved by the Bell right there." I'm like, "Dude, shut up. We're not even there 10 minutes, right?" I'm like, "Dude, shut up. What are the odds? There's no way that she's in this bar right now, right?" And so he said, "No, I swear it's her." I was like, "Well, if I turn around and it's not her, I'm going to punch you right here in front of everybody." He's like, "All right, no, I think it's her." So I look around, I look behind me, and this is like, the bar is like 30 feet away or whatever. I'm like, "Yeah, it kind of looks like her, so I'm going to forgive him. It kind of looks like her." So another 10 minutes go by. And again, I don't drink alcohol. And so I go up to the bar to get a cranberry orange juice. And that's one of the drinks that Dion used to drink, cranberry and orange juice mix, right? No alcohol or anything like that. So I go up to the bar, and sure enough, she comes and stands right next to me. So she had left the bar, went back to where her friends were, and came back, I guess, to get her drinks or something. And she's standing right next to me. I'm like, "Oh my gosh," and people say, like, "What'd you say to her?" or whatever. I never said anything to her, because I mean, I, people, being a big leaguer, people have come up to me and said silly stuff, right, all the time. I didn't want to be that person with her, so I
Right.
literally say anything. And so the reason why I bring up the story is because that question you asked that Hall of Famer, like,
Yeah.
I wish now that's what I would have asked her. It would have been an interesting question to ask, that I'm not trying to hit on or anything like that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that conversation could have went anywhere. And so I think of that question as chasing Tiffany, like chasing the moment back with Tiffany. If I ever ran into her or any other, superstar again, I will ask them that exact question. Who would you like to meet? And then whatever they say, and then you say why, and then you're in a conversation, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's why I brought that up.
Yeah, that's so cool. So yeah, you're kind of a student of questions and conversations and things like that. And questions are such a key to life. The quality of questions that we ask ourselves and ask of others determines the quality of our life. So that's really, really cool. Um, there's probably more to the story with Steve Klein, but we can skip it.
He was something, man. He still is something, but no, just a he's you know how he is. He's a great
Yeah,
guy.
yeah, those left-handed relievers oftentimes are crazy, and
He's an
Steve,
oddball.
Steve certainly is. And then Jimmy Edmonds, that's a whole Jimmy Ballgame. That's a whole different
Yeah.
Orange Housewives of or Housewives of Orange County.
Got it. Yeah, yeah. And then to his credit, I mean, he was himself on there. You know, he was not playing a role. Everything I watched when I saw him, like, yeah, well, that's Jimmy.
Yep, yep,
To his
yeah. I've
credit,
only
he was
only met
himself.
him once, but I did have to bring up the Orange Housewife thing because my wife loved watching that show.
Yeah, your wife, right?
That's right. That's right. Oh, so let's let's skip ahead unless you got something else that was maybe key in your baseball development career.
Well, I don't know. At the top of my head, I could talk baseball forever, but yeah, no, I just had a goal. I would say this too. Um, having a goal as a kid and trying to make all those decisions to lead up to where I eventually got to the major leagues. One of the things my senior year I remember doing, we had an assembly in our theater, and I'm not sure if all high schools do that, but I think some schools do what's similar. But they have the yearbook thing where they ask you, a bunch of questions about, who you are and what you did in high school and like where you're going to be 10 years from now, right?
Yeah,
And I remember putting in my yearbook, and it's in my yearbook right now, that 10 years from now, I'm going to be playing in the major leagues. Now, I told you, I've always thought I was going to play for the St. Louis Cardinals. And the reason why
wow.
I didn't put in my yearbook, I'm going to be playing for the St. Louis Cardinals, is because I knew that when you play in the major leagues, you don't necessarily, when you get drafted, you don't get the opportunity to pick what team you want to play for.
Right.
So that's why I didn't put it. But I always thought I was going to play for the Cardinals. But yeah, in my yearbook, I always thought it, and I made the decisions and was lucky enough and skillful enough and put enough hard work in to, 10 years from when I said that, I was in the major leagues with the St. Louis Cardinals. So, um, you know, I just want to, especially if kids see this, I want kids to know, like, when people say like anything is possible, it literally is. Um, but if you don't think it, and it's never, if you don't think it, it's never going to happen. So you have to believe it first, and it still may not happen, right? But you have to believe it first for it to be a goal that you're going to put out there into the universe, and then you start to make things happen to allow that dream to eventually come to you.
Yeah.
So, that's I wanted to share that with kids for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. So yeah, people do have those limiting beliefs, and I could see if somebody just worked you over when you were a kid and telling you that you'll never make it, and if
Oh my
that
god.
creeps in.
I had when I was in high school, there's probably 3, 4 guys that. So how I developed my baseball eye, I think, was playing fuzzball in my friend's backyard. Like he and his family had like an acre or so, and we built a fuzzball field, which is basically baseball with a tennis ball and a wiffle ball bat with duct tape around the back in the backyard. Well, I developed my hitting eye playing fuzzball with those guys, and we did it all the time during the baseball season during high school or whatever, my senior year. And so when I went to go play high school games, the ball coming from the pitcher looked slow compared to what I was doing fuzzball wise. So I think that developed. But the funny thing is, a couple years, well, I guess it was not a couple years, 5 years later, I got drafted by the St. Louis Cardinals in the 34th round. And I go
34th round.
34th round, yeah, which means I was just a roster filler at that point. I was there just to fill a roster for the superstars, the first, second, third rounders to compete against, right?
Yeah.
Not to make it to the major leagues. And so, like, after I got drafted for the St. Louis Cardinals, I go back to my buddy's house, and he had the nerve to tell me, like, you don't really think you're going to play for the Cardinals, right? So that is one of my good friends that I grew up with, and I was, playing baseball with all the time. And I was just drafted by the Cardinals, and he still doubted that I was ever going to play for the St. Louis Cardinals. And so, like, just little things like that, it's a quote unquote chip on your shoulder, but it's like, you know what? I'm going to prove him wrong. Like, I can't believe, like, I literally just got drafted by the Cardinals, and you're telling me I have no chance still. And so, like, stuff like that just drives me. And so, like, I knew I was gonna make it. I was
Yeah.
gonna.
Yeah.
I treated from that point on, and I was doing that anyway. I treated every at bat. Well, I started my junior year in college at Southeast Missouri State. So again, I apologize for the tangents, but my freshman year, I wasn't eligible at Southeast Missouri State because I was a walk on, and um, when you go to play Division One college sports, you have to go through something through the NCAA called the clearinghouse. And I
Okay.
was a walk on at Southeast Missouri State, so I never went through the clearinghouse because I had no counselors or anybody to teach me, what I needed to do to be eligible my freshman year. So I ended up being a Proposition 48 because I didn't go through that clearinghouse. So I wasn't eligible my freshman year. My sophomore year, I did really well. I started and had a really good season, and then my junior year, after my sophomore year, people were telling me that, man, you have another season like that, you're going to get drafted. And that's all I thought about was getting drafted and leaving school and going to play professional baseball, and had a terrible junior year.
Oh no.
Terrible junior year. And draft day, my junior year, I remember sitting here for 3 days at my mom's house waiting for a phone call and never got it. And it crushed me. And so I said, well, I got one more year, my senior year at SEMO. um, you got one last chance to have a good year and possibly get drafted, or then your dream's going to be gone. And so I started treating every at bat like a business transaction. It was me versus the pitcher. You know, I'm going to give my best effort, and I always thought I was better than the pitcher. So the best hitters, 300 hitters, they're going to make 7 outs. Well, I ended up hitting 385 my senior year. Had a
385.
had a 35 game hitting streak. 32nd game was the OVC record and the 13th longest in NCAA history. And so I took that mindset into my professional career. And so I treated every at bat like a business transaction, and I think that locked me in. It kept working for me. So I just, one at bat at a time, one pitch at a time, try to work the counts, get on base. Once you get on base, use your speed, steal some bases, score some runs. Your leadoff guy that plays outfield, you got to play solid defense, but your role is to score runs and save runs from happening. It's that
Yeah,
simple. And
yeah.
uh, they taught us, George Kissel instilled in the defensive side of things. He said, hey, man, you might be 0 for 5, you might be 1 for 20, but if you can save a run from scoring, your job is to go get the ball and get it into the infield as fast as possible. You just do your job and you'll be fine. And so, little things like that, I just kept adding up over the years and kept instilling it in my game. And, it worked out for me. And so, yeah, that's how I did it. Just one little transaction at a time, stuff that I can control to a degree, right? You can't control if you get a hit or not, but if you lock in and have an approach, and I'm trying to hit a line drive off of the pitcher every pitch I get, I'm trying to hit a line drive off the pitcher. You keep it simple.
Yep.
Other than that, you're gonna be successful. And so, I don't know why I did it, but that's how I thought. And that those little, everybody's heard the saying, "How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a
One bite
time."
at a time. Yep. Eat the elephant one bite at a time.
That's all I did. One at bat at a time, one pitch at a time, just small bite to the elephant, and was able to reach my goal eventually.
It's so funny. I hear in your voice that like locked in, like we're talking sports and you're like, I remember, you could hear you're like right back to where you mentally were back then.
And that's why I'm glad nobody ever told me the odds, right?
Yeah.
Because I probably would have, it probably would have fueled me, but I, especially before I got drafted, I'm
Yeah.
glad nobody told me those odds. Yeah.
Yeah. So you talked about using your strengths and everything in baseball. And I'm a big believer. I learned that from John Maxwell was focus on your strengths because the world rewards that. We love to see the people that have exceptional strengths and use your God-given talents and maximize on those. We've all got weaknesses, and if we take those from maybe a 2 and increase them to a 3 or a 4, we're still pretty terrible. But if we
Yeah.
got a skill of an 8 and we can bring that up to a 9 or a 10, that stands out in the world and glorifies God. So good for you for sticking to what worked and just maximizing everything that you had. And you certainly were a speed demon, and you used that to play defense and accentuate the offense. Mike Matheny, former Cardinal coach, Kansas City Royals coach, the question was asked of him. Everybody asked me what's it take to be a major leaguer, and he said, you got to be willing to do things that other people aren't willing to do. And you've got to
Sure.
be willing to not do things that everybody else does. So asking you, like, I didn't drink. And that's a huge thing, like staying away from the things that pull you away from the main thing. So it's funny, without telling you, Matheny has just said this. You
No,
keyed in on
absolutely.
there.
Not only that, but you know, you absolutely you have to do what other people are not willing to do,
Yeah.
and vice versa. That's great advice that Mike gave, and
Yeah. Yeah. He goes, so many people are talented and they could be in the major leagues, but they goof up on both ends of the spectrum.
that's right. And then like I've gone through the thought about this. I've never been the best athlete. I've never been the best baseball player on any of the rosters. When I was in high school, I was a walk on at college, right? College.
Yeah.
I've never been the best person on any roster I played with. Somehow, some way, I just stuck to the main thing, like you said, and was able to, eventually reach my goal, and I didn't even actually reach my ultimate goal, right? Which was I also, I wanted to stay in nice hotels and fly, but I also wanted to see a bank account with $1 million in it, right? So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
get that, but I did get to a high level.
So we just talked Matheny for a second. So let's switch over to a story that involves Tony La Russa.
Okay.
So let's talk about kind of as your baseball career kind of went the way that it went towards the end. Give us a little background on the kind of phase out and something that happened with Tony La Russa, and I'd love to hear that story. And then we've got kind of some follow ups to that story. So I'll let you take it from there. This is
You said some background, so you asked for it, but yeah. So I was drafted in '95 from SEMA. I told you it's the 34th rounder. So
yep
when you come in, and I said again, you're a roster filler, right? So I felt that from the beginning. Lucky enough, for my first game in rookie ball in '95, after I was drafted, I started that first game and went 2 for 4. From that point on, my rookie ball coach, Steve Turco, kept playing me that season. So ended up it's a 34th rounder. I ended up that season hitting 296, I believe it was, which is really good for a first incoming, rookie ball player. I'm telling you the long story because there's a reason I'm gonna lead up to that Tony La
yeah
Russa.
yeah
So then the next season, I go to full Class A, and I had a teammate of mine say to me that was in rookie ball, and he was in rookie ball as his second or third year in rookie ball. He's like, "Yeah, you hit 296, but let's see if you can do it in full season Class A." Next season, I'm in full season Class A. Don't forget, he says that to me, and that fueled me. Like I said, when people say negative stuff to me, it fuels me. I ended up hitting 359 that year and stole 50 bags, led the league in average, and then tied for the league with 50 stolen bases. Okay,
how
so
many games?
uh, I'm not sure. I had 98 runs that year, 17 doubles, 14 triples.
They
Um,
don't play 162 games, so these stats are crazy.
like 130 something games. I
Yeah,
would
yeah,
I don't know. Anyway, so after that season was over, then the next level is high Class A, right? Well, so when I came to spring training the next year, so this will be my third year, right? Rookie ball, Class A. After that season, I'm on the radar with the Cardinals. After you hit 359, the
yeah.
Cardinals invite me to big league spring training because I'm on the radar, and they're like, "Hey, this kid might have the opportunity to play in the big leagues with us," right? So I'm in spring. I go to spring training, and Ozzy's there, and all those guys. And so, like, being a big Cardinal fan as a kid, like, I'm now a peer with Ozzie Smith, right? Like, he's looking at me, he's like, "Oh man, I know who this kid is, or whatever," right? So so I believe, I can't remember exactly. I want to say Royce was there, but I can't. The years get really screwy with me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Royce Clayton. He probably
Yeah,
was there at that time.
I
Yeah,
want
him
to
and
say
him
what.
and Ozzy going at it.
Right. Well, anyway, they treated me as a peer, and I felt so good about myself. And then management says to me, "Well, we want to see if you can skip over high Class A and go straight to Double A."
Ooh, big
And
jump.
I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm up for the challenge. I don't care where I'm at. I'm gonna play in the major league. So I don't care about Double A or Triple A. You put me wherever, I'm gonna make it, right?" So I go to in '97. I go to Arkansas, and you can look up the numbers. I can't remember exactly what their numbers are. There's I hit like 320 or something like that, and stole 30 something bases, whatever.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
foggy to me. I did really well my third year, and that off season, the Cardinals did not protect me in the expansion draft because 97, 98 was the years that Tampa Bay and Arizona were coming in.
Yep.
Okay. So I got sent out to the Arizona Fall League because Dimitri Young left the Arizona Fall League. The Cardinals have like 3 spots to send players to the Arizona Fall League. Dimitri Young went originally, and he came home. So he's like, I'm done or whatever. And so like, hey, we got a spot. Do you want to go to the Arizona Fall League? I'm like, yes, because that's the prospect league during the offseason from 97 to 98. I get picked up in the expansion draft by Tampa Bay. And so I leave the Cardinal organization. Uh, they did not protect me from the expansion on the expansion roster, and Tampa Bay ends up picking me up. So watching, if you ever, it's on YouTube right now. If anybody want to watch this, there's the expansion draft. Kerry Robinson put that in. Tony La Russa, when my name is picked, you can look at his face. He doesn't seem phased why that Tampa Bay took me, and I always took that personal too, right? Kind of smiled, kind of laughs, and I always took that as well. They let me go, like, ooh, they're glad that Tampa Bay took me, right? That might not be how they were feeling, but that's how I felt. They looked at
Yep,
it.
yep. So let me pause on that for just a second. Just a second. So there's this guy, Keith Koshner. He's a business coach and he's a faith-based guy, super cool guy.
Mm-hmm.
And he tells about stories. He's like, there's the story that this guy knows, the story that this guy knows. And as you're there yourself, you take in that story and you create it yourself. So what you're saying is what you saw, you took it in and you created your story and it became a belief and it's just fact.
Exactly. Yep.
Key says you can pick your story. So filter and figure it out and choose a story that serves you versus a story that doesn't serve you. So ask yourself a question: does this story serve me? And so anyway,
Right.
your reality of what you saw. Go ahead.
Yes. So I took it personal, and then so I go to Tampa Bay, and I'm not going to go into that because that's another long story.
All right, skip ahead.
It didn't work out like it was supposed to with Tampa Bay, and that's when again the Mariners picked me up during that off season when I went to Arizona Fall League again. Tampa Bay sent me back to the Fall League when I didn't want to go, and the Mariners ended up picking me up. All right. Anyway, so that was 99. 99, the season was another crazy year. The Mariners ended up trading me to the Reds. Again, I was in big leagues in 99 with the Reds in September. And then after that season was over, um, I'm sorry, I went to spring training in 2000 with the Reds, okay, after 99. And they released me. So early 2000, I'm at home and cannot believe that I'm out of baseball. I couldn't find a job. Nobody picked me up or anything. I had literally hit 296, 359, like 320. I think it was 321, 280, 318, and I just got released and I'm out of baseball, and I could not believe it. Because with those numbers, you don't get released. You're probably in the big leagues, and you got right. And I'm out of baseball, no calls or anything. So I end up getting a phone call from my agent, and he says, "Hey, the New York Yankees had a guy go down. This is so the season starts. I don't have a job. I'm at home. My agent called, said the New York Yankees lost a guy on opening night in AAA. Would you like that job? Because they have an opening now because he's one of their big prospects or whatever. His name was Donzel McDonald. I think on opening night he stole second, hurt his wrist or broke his wrist or whatever. So they have an opening with the Yankees AAA team. And I'm like, well, heck yeah, I'll take it. I'm out of baseball, right? At this point, I think I have to go find something for the rest of my life to do. I was getting no calls. I take that job. That's why when I see Brian Cashman all the time, I'm like, thank you for saving my career.
Yeah.
So I go to AAA with the Yankees, and at that time they were hot. In fact, he told me, he's like, usually, we expect to make a playoff run. Hopefully, we're going to get another World Series ring. And if we get to the playoffs, we want to use your speed. We usually have a guy come up to pinch run, kind of what I did with the Reds in September, be a pinch runner, defensive type guy. I'm like, well, yeah, I'd love to be. It's the Yankees, right? Plus, I don't have a job.
Right.
I go there with the Yankees, and I start off. My hitting coach tried to change all my mechanics and everything, and I started off. Well, ended up finishing the season again, hitting like 311 or 12, something like that with the Yankees. They end up trading for a guy by the name of Luis Polonia to take the role that he said that I might get, and so I never got called up with the Yankees. And they won the World Series that year. I think that was the second or third or the four that they won, that Jeter won. So I
Yep.
just
No ring for you.
just missed the ring with the Yankees right there, right? So when that season was over, this is 2000. I go to play winter ball in the Dominican, which I always wanted to do. Plus, it's like the quote unquote best league to play in during the winter balls, the Dominican League.
Yeah.
And I went down there and did really well. And when I was done there, the Yankees, I'm a free agent. The Yankees wanted to bring me back, and um, the Devil Rays wanted to bring me back too, which was crazy to me. I told my agent, well, why don't you call the Cardinals up and see if they have interest? Because remember when I said in '96 I went to big league spring training? Well, Tony La Russa told me back then, he said, I remember he told me this, he said, if you keep hitting, you're going to help this team win games. And then I went in the expansion draft and I left the Cardinals organization. Well, after the 2000 season, my agent calls up the Cardinals, and I guess he talked to John Mozeliak, who's the GM now. He was the assistant at the time, and they had interest in bringing me back. And so they brought me back to a minor league deal, an invitation for spring training. So when I go to spring training, my only goal, it wasn't to make the team, because I knew, like, I'm not just going to be some guy that comes in and is going to make the team. Like, that just rarely happens, right? I just want to put a positive bug or thought in their mind when they send me down to AAA. And that's exactly what I did. I had a fantastic spring training. And when I got sent down to Memphis, the last thing Tony told me at that time was, hey, man, you're going to help this team win this year. And I was,
Wow.
you guys get sitting down to AAA, they're mad, right? They're pissed off. I was the other way. I was ecstatic, right? And so sure enough, I go down to AAA. I'm not even there a week. And in our first road trip, we go to Tacoma. I remember getting an apartment in Memphis. My wife came down with her kids, and she just moved in the apartment. And we go on our first road trip, and I get the call from John Mose, like, hey, we need you back into St. Louis. Call my parents, call my wife, and she was kind of mad. She's like, oh, we're going to the big leagues, but all right, what am I going to do with this apartment or whatever? I'm like, I don't know, get rid of it, So, so so all right, so that was my first real stint in the big leagues. I was with the Reds. I got some time with the Devil Rays too, 9 days with the Devil Rays, but I didn't really get a chance to play. Get
Yeah.
called up 2001 with the Cardinals, and that's what really got my first shot. My whole first 2001, I was in the big leagues, and that was my first shot at the big leagues. Now, mind you, a year before, I was out of baseball without a job, couldn't find a job. Cashman reignites my career, and then Tony gives me the opportunity to play in the big leagues where no other team or management was doing that, right? So that's 01. 02, they sent me down a little bit, I guess a few times in 02. And I even had, all right, so not many people know this story. So in 2002, it's about halfway through the season, and Tony LaRusse, 2001, I'm sorry I'm breaking up, but
Yeah. Yeah.
in 2001, I led the league, I think, in pinch hits off the bench as a rookie. In 2002, I was doing really well, but he said to me before we go on this trip to Pittsburgh, he says, hey, man, I just want you to stay ready. You're my number one weapon off the bench. Be ready about sixth, seventh inning. All right. So we go to Pittsburgh, and this is the first year of PNC Park. And people are probably not familiar how it's built, but the clubhouse is in the middle. And then the field level. It's the field level, and then you walk up the stairs to get to the clubhouse, and then the other side of the clubhouse from the field is the batting cage, right? So one day, I think it was the first or second game there. I believe Travis Smith was a starting pitcher. Like he got called up for a few days and was our starting pitcher this day. I'm upstairs in the batting cage around the second or third inning, and I'm upstairs hitting in the cage. The reason why I didn't do it before the game is because no matter how early you get there before the game, you got the superstars like Pujols and Edmonds and these guys. They're there early getting their swings, right? So as a bench guy, a guy that's barely on the roster, I'm not going to get a whole lot of swings. I can't work on my hitting, right? So I'll do it early in our game, right? So I'm upstairs hitting, doing my own thing, and it was hot in there. Two things: they didn't have a TV, so there's no way of finding out what's going on in the game,
Oh,
and it
wow.
was hot in there. There's no fan in there, so I'm in there hitting. I take my jersey off and everything. I'm by myself hitting off the tee, just trying to get my stroke, and I get tired, so I come in the clubhouse. I sit next to our video guy, and our video guy during the game is watching the game, videotaping all the at bats and stuff to show to the players. So doing all that. So I'm sitting next to him for like 5-10 minutes. I go back in the cage, hitting again. I come back in the clubhouse, and while I'm coming in the clubhouse, Jose Oquendo, he's like, "Hey man, Tony's looking for you." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, are you serious?" He's like, "Yeah, get your jersey." I run back in the cage, get my jersey. I'm getting ready to run out to the field, and as he meets me at the top of the steps, he says, "Tony says, don't worry about it." I'm like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "Yeah." He said, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." I'm like, "All right." So I go back in the cage. I start hitting again. It's not even 10 minutes later, and Tony comes upstairs. I guess it was after the half inning. Tony comes upstairs and meets me in this tunnel between the cage and the locker room, and he just starts yelling at me.
Oh,
And
no.
I'm like, "Why are you yelling at me?" Like, and this is the first time, like, up until this point, I was kind of, again, being the guy that was barely drafted, to play baseball and working his butt off to get to the big leagues and being out of baseball a year before. I'm doing everything I can to stay there, right? And to put on a positive impression on these people, right? This is my second year, but, I'm still trying to stay there. And so he's yelling at me. I'm like, "Why are you yelling at me? I bust my butt and I do everything. I'm trying to do everything the right way." So I guess somebody, and this came out later, somebody told him I was upstairs watching TV. And I don't know if it was our video guy. I don't know who it was, but I was not watching TV. I did sit down for 5 minutes next to our video guy, and the TV, like our game was on. I wasn't watching TV. I was sitting there resting. We were watching our game, and then I go back and get some more swings in. Right at the time, he's yelling at me. So this is the first time I actually stood up to him, and it's kind of like when boys confront their dads for the first time as
Yep.
teenagers. This was my stance against him, and I'm thinking like I'm going to defend myself, and I actually think he respected me more for defending myself. But I was like, "Tony, why are you yelling at me? I'm up here working on my swing. I am not doing anything stupid or anything." I even told him I busted my butt to get to the big leagues. Like, my story is unbelievable. I'm not trying to do anything stupid to get sitting. I never want to go down in minor leagues again. And so he just going back at the last thing he says to me was, "All right, well, go down. Well, I want you to go down on the bench. I want you to sit on the bench and don't move." Like I'm a little kid again, and don't move for the rest of the game. So I'm like, I'm mad at this point. Like
Oh,
I'm really
yeah.
pissed off. I don't think this is fair to me, but whatever. So I go downstairs and I'm sitting on that bench. I didn't move the whole rest of the game. In the seventh inning, I kid you not, in like the seventh inning, they're looking for Miguel Cairo. And somebody says, "Where's Miguel at?" And somebody says he's upstairs in the cage hitting. And I'm like, and then he goes, "All right, go give him a heads up. I'm gonna be using him." And I almost lost it. Because I'm like, if you would have did the exact same thing with me, we'd have no issue. But I heard that happening, and I almost lost. Dude, I swear, Dan, if I had money or if I had a long contract, I would have had it out with him right there on that bench right there
Right.
again. But the position I was in, I'm barely there. I'm like, I didn't think it was. I thought I might get sent down after the game's over. I thought
Yeah.
this was the last day I'm in the big league, so I didn't want to screw that up. It's the only reason why I didn't say anything at the time. Well, I was super mad at him then. And so the redemption story you're talking about is, so, when my career's over, the book Three Nights in August comes out, and I guess you can tell your people about my walk-off home run and all that stuff, but it ended up being a main part of the book Three Nights in August. And in the book, I'm not really positively mentioning in it, so I'm frustrated about that. Well, I'm a pro scout, baseball scout now, and I do a lot of traveling. In spring training about 3 years ago, when Tony was working for the D-backs, um, I had a lot of time early in the morning. Usually the game started about 1. It was about 9, 10 o'clock. I'm like, I'm headed over to Scottsdale where Arizona is. I'm gonna go talk to Tony. I don't know. One day I just like, I'm gonna go talk to Tony. So I go over to their complex. I walk in and I go to the receptionist. It's like, hey, I'm a former player for Tony La Russa. My name's Kerry Robinson. Do you mind getting him for a few minutes or whatever? I just want to speak with him. So she went and goes and gets him, and sure enough, he came out. I said, hey man, how you doing, Skip? And we've always had a decent relationship. It hasn't been a bad relationship. I was like, I want to, if you don't mind, I want to interview you about the Three Nights in August stuff, because to this point, I hadn't seen him since Three Nights in August. And there's a lot of misconceptions in that book, or like you said, everybody has their story, right?
Yep.
From my standpoint, I thought it was not fair to me. So I wanted to confront him on it, and I wanted to videotape it and get it on in case he tried to have discrepancies at some point in the future about it, right?
Right. Right.
So if anybody wants to check that out, it's on YouTube. So just put like my Kerry Robinson interview with Tony La Russa. So one of the questions I asked him in that little interview on YouTube was, remember that little thing we had in Pittsburgh? you know, that little spat we had. And so he kind of gives his answers on that. He kind of answers some things in the book Three Nights in August. One of the things that really bothered me was, you know, he said that I wasn't always into the game, and I didn't. That was not accurate. I asked him a question about that. One time I was in right field at Busch Stadium, a day game, and our first base coach or outfield coach at the time moves me. Like, there was a pitch thrown, and he moves me like 2 steps to the left. So I moved 2 steps to the left. A pitch is thrown, and they move me back 3 steps to the right. So I move back 3 steps to the right. And then another pitch is thrown, and they move me back 1 step. So I move a step, and I look over to Edmonds, and I put my hands up like what's going, like this, like what's going on? And Edmonds does the same thing back. He's like, I don't know. So so it was just a weird instance, right? It was a one-time weird instance. And then later on in the book Three Nights in August was Kerry's not paying attention. He used to daydream or look in the stands or whatever. I'm like, that was one time it happened. And to me, it feels like they did that just so he could tell the writer in the book Three Nights in August I wasn't into the game. And that was not the case. It happened one time, and it was the weirdest instance ever. And so I'm like, that's not right. That's not fair, you know? And then one more, and then I'll end the story. I apologize to your viewers. Another time was in spring training. I would say it was after 02, so 02 to 03 maybe. He comes up to me. I remember the story, and because I remember this is so odd. I'm the only person on, I think it was field 2. I could tell you where it was. I can't tell the exact number, but I can tell you where I was. He used to go around and hit the balls in from, like, the pitchers are supposed to shag when you're hitting BP, right? They weren't. So I'm literally the only person in the hitting group. I go out to shag the balls. There's a bunch of baseballs in the outfield like Easter eggs. And so I'm shagging the balls. He usually would go off with his fungo
Yeah.
and hit the balls back in, right? So I'm the only person out there. He walks out with his fungo to me. He starts talking to me, and he says to me, and this is in the book Three Nights in August. He says to me, hey, man, you don't look happy. If you're not happy, let's get Walt, let's get your agent, and we'll get you out of here. And I'm like, why do you think I'm not happy? Like, Tony, like, I grew up a Cardinal fan. I'm from St. Louis. I grew up a Cardinal fan. Like, I'm elated to wear this jersey, right? This is awesome. The birds on the bat to me is awesome. I love it. And being a Cardinal fan, I know how to think like a Cardinal fan. I know that I'm not. For the whole time, I wanted to get the opportunity to start. Now, mind just like my third year, I never had a chance to start. I wanted to be a starter. As a Cardinal fan, you got Jim Edmonds in center, J.D. Drew in right field, and Albert Pujols in left field. I do not want to see Kerry Robinson playing over any of those guys.
Right, right,
Right? I mean, just I mean, historically, nobody in baseball wants to see Kerry Robinson play in front of those guys. You know,
right.
I don't want to be that guy to play in front of those guys because I mean, look the pressure, right? But if I'm supposedly the fourth outfielder, right? What frustrated me was those fourth outfield at bats did not always go to me. Sometimes they went to um, Eli, who was a catcher. He'd play outfield, or Placido Polanco played. It was an infielder, played outfield. Eduardo Perez was a first baseman, played outfield. You know, he split the at bats with everybody, and I'm supposed to be the fourth outfielder. Plus, I was arbitration eligible coming up, right? So
Yeah,
unless you have any at bats, the opportunity to do anything on the field, and you go to arbitration, they're not going to pay you any money because you don't have anything to show for it. I just want to be the guy, if I'm a fourth outfielder, to get more at bats. That's it. I mean, I don't. Is that asking for too much? I
yeah,
don't think that's asking for too much, right? And that's what I said. So it came out in the book that he said that we had this conversation. It's just me and Tony, right? Just the two people, right? Nobody's even close to us, right? So they ended up keeping me that year. And then, years later, the book Three Nights in August comes out and, saying that he said the conversation to me. And then at the end of the conversation, he says, well, if anybody wants you to be a starter, then I want to play that team all the time. I do not remember him saying that to me because literally, if you said that to me, like like every conversation I left with Tony, he made you feel good about the conversation.
yeah, yeah.
If your manager says to you, if you want to really want to be a starter, we'll get you somewhere else. And I want to play that team all the time. Like he said in the book, Three Nights in August, if your manager says that to you, he's telling you you're not good enough, right? That's what he's telling you. So
Right,
I don't remember him saying that to me. So he did not say that to me. I always left the conversation in a good way. So I confronted him on that in that interview. And, you guys can look to see what he says on that interview, but ultimately you asked the question, is the story about forgiveness? I think the thing with me and Tony is when nobody gave me the opportunity to play at the major league level like I always wanted to my whole life, when nobody gave me that opportunity or just give me a AAA job besides the Yankees, Tony stepped up and gave me the opportunity. Now I kicked through the door and earned my spot, right? I did the good things to earn my spot, but he opened the door. He gave me a crack in the door. But once I got through the door, I felt like there was a ceiling on my production that he was not going to let me through to a certain level because I wasn't getting the opportunities to break through like some other guys have under him. And so ultimately, I forgave him, but I think he cost me a lot of money in my career in a lot of ways because the book Three Nights in August came the spring of '05 when I was in spring training with the Mets. And I had a really good spring with them. They had me making the team in New York and everything. And then the book comes out that spring. And when you got a Hall of Fame manager that writes a book about you or mentions you in there and it's not that complimentary, what's the new team going to do? They'll be, oh, well, La Russa thought this negative stuff about him, you know, and they ended up letting me go. Like the papers in New York had me making the team and they just released me. They didn't even send me to AAA. They just released me. Again, there's a story, right? There's a story you're talking about. That's a story that I've made up in my mind, but the way it happened, it was really shady. Now, ultimately, Tony was doing his job and, he's managing 40 different people, right? Not just one Kerry Robinson, but to me, it's personal because it's my career. So
right.
ultimately, like, what can I do? The guy gave me the opportunity of a lifetime, but I think he did cost me a lot of money ultimately. And he even says that in an interview. So that's the story of forgiveness that you wanted me to talk about.
So you held on to that. So '05, the Mets, and like you held on to that. So how did that help you in life to hold on to it? I think the answer is it didn't.
Right? Well, that's a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
I think ultimately it cost me a lot of money, but like, what can I do now? Like if I hold on to the hate or I hate the guy, like I don't hate the guy, you know. So we're all humans. We all make mistakes, and again, he's managing so many different personalities at the same time period.
Yeah. But that pulled on you a lot. That weighed on you heavily for a while.
But him giving me that interview about 3 years ago, that let me. I mean, that led a lot of the frustration and pressure. I kind of gave it away, like because he was first of all, he didn't even have to give me the time. He's in spring training with his new organization doing his job. We go off to the side to a picnic table, and I have my little tablet. Is how I interviewed him. I mean,
Yeah.
I asked him all those questions off the top of my head. I think I asked him like 10 or 11 questions off the top of my head. You know, I didn't prepare. In fact, 2 hours before that, I wasn't even thinking about it. I was like,
Right, right.
I'm driving. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna go talk to Tony, right? It's just the thing. So, you know, yeah, I felt so much better after that interview. But, ultimately I think it cost me a lot of money. But what do? You
Yeah.
just have to move
Yeah.
on.
I mean, you held on to it for 12 years.
Yeah, a long time. And a lot of times
Yeah.
people don't get that opportunity, right? And all kinds of things happen to people in life, and they don't get to confront that person or that situation that they felt they were wronged about. And I did. Not only did I, but I got some of the answers that I was looking for, and so he didn't have to grant that to me, and so we're good.
Yeah, that was a huge gift that he gave you. And what did that do for you mentally to shift before you interviewed him to after you interviewed him?
Yeah. Well, anyway, when any type of athlete, whether you played in high school, college, or whatever, a lot of your identity is tied up in you as an athlete, right? So when your career is over and it ends for everybody at some point, you feel like a part of you or something has died, right? You mourn. You
Hmm.
actually, it takes athletes a long time to mourn their careers or their identities or come to grips with who they were. So that is odd anyway. So I kind of forgot your question, but I wanted to say that is odd anyway. So it's a tough period for you, and so going through that, going through and then going through the 12 years. Now I only went through that for about 3 or 4 years, but the 12 years ultimately, it didn't like tear me apart every day, but to finally get those answers, it gave me some peace of mind.
Yeah, yeah. And like just it wears on you. And I knew you prior to the interview, and
Yeah.
you could always tell there was a little something that a chip on your shoulder, a little something that was had you on edge a little bit. You're always happy and all that stuff, but when you got a little bit of private time, you could tell, when
Well,
things got tough, there was something that you were holding on to. I
well, you
wasn't
remember
exactly sure
Dan?
what it was, but through conversation, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that one's a sore subject.
My last year was '07, and me and you had did something at Bush Stadium about where your picture is in the background, right? We were up in those suites
Oh,
area,
yeah, yeah, absolutely. That was awesome.
and it was the first time I came back to a major league game, to the Cardinals game, since being a player, right? It was at the new stadium, and
Yep.
I told you guys like I can't even watch this stuff, like that was like literally right at the beginning of that's the first time I seen a big league game not being on the field, right? And so I remember at that time like I was still frustrated and crushed at that time. I didn't even want to be there, but the people we were with, I decided, it made more sense for me to be for them than for myself. And so you remember that time, right?
Yeah, I do. I absolutely I forgot about it, but yeah, I remember that time, but I forgot that you had shared why you didn't
Yeah,
really enjoy being at the field.
right. At that time, and now I'm a baseball scout at the field all the time. Right?
So that release that you got, it was unbelievable to see the interview, unbelievable to see you after that, just having that weight off your shoulders. It was like you were a whole new man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I like to
Oh,
give you um, and I just want to say thanks to you for interviewing me, allowing me to say that. Right, even every time I say it, it makes me even feel better about the whole situation. So I enjoy talking about it.
that's great. So one, I commend you for having that thought and then the follow through. People avoid conflict conversations often.
Yeah,
And that one could have been major conflict for people that watched the interview. It turns out it wasn't major conflict whatsoever. It was like two old pals hanging out together. But when you
exactly.
knew the deep angst that you had watching the video, I'm like, this is going like a miracle is happening right now. This is crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just encourage a lot of people to go check it out. Again, it's a Kerry Robinson interview
Yeah,
point.
I'll link it. I'll link it on the show. Yep, I'll link it on the show so everybody can check that out. Make it easy to find. But yeah, that was just really, really cool to see you kind of walk through that journey, and then come out the other side a happier, just more blessed and joyful person. It was incredible. That was incredible.
Absolutely.
And from a faith-based standpoint, asking for forgiveness and giving forgiveness are just keys. And I think a lot of times guys, especially guys, we're afraid to ask for forgiveness. We're afraid to admit wrongdoing. And we keep that to ourselves. And it's just a gift to yourself and to the other person to get that weight off your shoulders and move on with life, exchange the
Absolutely.
story for a better story.
I would encourage people to do that, right? Not everybody, but a lot of people have different situations, not exactly like mine, but similar. And I've been on, I've ran across a lot of wise people. And one of the things I've heard is called something called eat the crust first, right?
What is
So
it
if
called?
you have eat the crust first. So like if you eat a slice of pizza, most people eat the pizza and they finish and they have the crust there. They either eat it or they throw it away, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So the crust is like the worst part. So if you
right.
eat the crust first, there's nothing but good after that. So if you have a conflict or something that you might be trying to avoid, just go ahead and do it. Eat the crust first, and after that, it's all good. Just get through the worst part, and after that, it's all good.
Yep, absolutely. So I'll often do my most dreaded task very early in the morning.
Yeah,
And then once that's done, the whole rest of the day goes so much better as opposed to going day after day after day of not doing the dreaded task
right.
and having it weigh on me. So, and in the morning, you've got more willpower. So you can also follow through and accomplish the big thing, whatever it is. So,
That's right. Yep.
little side note there, but Kerry, I appreciate you being on with us. And if we were to think of a challenge for the guys, maybe based on your playing career, and well, I guess that's the challenge right there. Is you have a conflict conversation with somebody and find out if that story's true that you're telling yourself, or find out the other person's perspective. So seek first to understand, and then you'll be understood.
Yeah. And just, well, I don't want to get political, but this is a great time, right? During this interview, we got a lot of people that are anti whatever, right? Just take the time to think about from that other person's perspective, and something might come up to think, yeah, I never thought of that, right? So there's a perfect example for you. Yeah.
Yeah. So these conversations might not be all that conflict based, but in your head it is. So Jesus would reach out and talk to all kinds of people. So this is a conversation, if you approach it with love, if you approach it with curiosity, and step into a conflict conversation that maybe you've been avoiding for a while this week. And, send me a note. Let me know how you're blessed with that. And the times I've done it, it has helped me out tremendously, and obviously helped out K Rob. I saw it myself firsthand, and that's awesome.
It makes us better as people to, go out into the world for our wives and our children, our families, and it makes you a better person ultimately. Even if you make a mistake or you say something wrong or you did something wrong, apologize or whatever, and then move on. Like it's just going to make you ultimately better. And I want to have people like yourself or people that are going to hold me to when I make mistakes. And if I make a mistake and you catch me on it and you tell me about it, I'm gonna say, okay, never thought of it that way. And okay, well, Dan just made me a better person today.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's a nice little segue to the Journey of a Christian Dad Facebook community that we've got, because that's what we do in there is share and ask some hard questions and help guys get to be better spiritual leaders of their family. So thank you so much for joining us. Like, this was really cool, something I've been looking forward to for a long time.
No problem. Thanks, Dan.
You bet. Thank you, Carrie.